was just a little baby. I didn't have many toys.
Move It was the first record I ever made, and I always say to people, I was really lucky, you know, because I kind of started at the top. And I've never felt so liberated, because usually when you're in the public eye, you sort of can't sort of go, come on, Sue.
Imagine being one of the biggest music stars in history, only to disappear from the spotlight entirely. Fans begged for answers. Where was Cliff Richard? What happened? Today, we're uncovering the truth about the heartbreak, betrayal, and controversies that almost ended it all, and how he fought his way back. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. How does a teenager named Harry Webb, living in modest post-war England, transform into the icon known as Cliff Richard? To understand that, you have to go back to his early years, a time shaped by both upheaval and change.
Things do change. I don't think it's just in the music industry. It's changed in all the facets of show business have changed. My theory is, though, that in Britain here, we hadn't really got into that rock and roll. The whole rock and roll business was still very much American.
Born in 1940 in Lucknow, India, Harry Webb grew up in a world of contradictions. The son of a catering manager and a homemaker, his family's life during the final years of British colonial rule mirrored that of many Anglo-Indians. Complex, uncertain, and increasingly displaced. When India gained independence in 1947, the Webbs were among the thousands of Anglo-Indian families who emigrated to England. They arrived in a post-war Britain, grappling with rationing, bomb scars, and an uneasy transition to the modern world. Life in England wasn't glamorous. The family settled in a modest home in Hertfordshire, where Harry experienced cultural dislocation firsthand. Money was tight, the country was rebuilding, and opportunities for someone like Harry felt limited. He attended Cheshunt Secondary Modern School, a place known more for shaping workers than dreams. But he found an escape in music. Inspired by American rock and roll pioneers like Elvis Presley and Little Richard, Harry began experimenting with a sound that didn't yet exist in Britain. In those early days, British music lacked the raw energy and youthful defiance that was sweeping through America. For Harry, this presented both a challenge and an opportunity. As his love for music grew, so did his determination to break free from the average life that post-war Britain seemed to encourage. Reinvention wasn't just an idea, it was a necessity. Harry understood that to stand out, he couldn't simply be a boy-next-door singer. He needed a new persona to match the magnetic energy of rock and roll. The transformation began with his stage name, Cliff Richard. The first name, Cliff, was chosen for its sturdy, all-British connotation, while Richard paid homage to his idol, Little Richard. It wasn't just a name change. It was the creation of a brand, a symbol of something fresh, confident, and unapologetically modern. Then came the right moment to introduce himself to the world. At just 17, Cliff and his newly formed band, the Drifters, later renamed the Shadows, recorded Move It, a track bursting with youthful rebellion and rock energy. The song wasn't just catchy, it was a revolution. Released in 1958, it was hailed as the first genuine British rock and roll hit. Simple, raw, and electrifying, it convinced a generation of British teenagers that they didn't have to rely on American imports to quench their thirst for rock and roll. Cliff Richard could give them that excitement and more. John Lennon famously remarked that before Cliff, Britain didn't have its own music worth listening to. That's the kind of seismic cultural shift Move It represented, and Cliff hysteria followed. Teenage girls screamed during his performances, mobbed him in public, and plastered his photos across their bedroom walls. His concerts turned into frenzied events where fans fought to get closer to the stage, sometimes even fainting from excitement. Cliff wasn't just a musician, he was Britain's answer to Elvis, the embodiment of youth and possibility that post-war Britain desperately needed. But unlike the wild, rebellious rock stars of America, Cliff's image was carefully managed to appeal to the broader public. He was clean-cut, polite, and approachable, a kind of safe rebellion that parents could reluctantly approve of. Behind the scenes, though, the reality of Cliff's calculated reinvention was far more complex. His success wasn't accidental. Every step, from the choice of his name to the style of his music, was part of a larger strategy to establish not just himself, but an entirely new space for British artists to thrive. This wasn't just Cliff's rise, this was the birth of an industry, and as planned and polished as it may have appeared, the pressure of maintaining that image and living up to it was constant. Fans saw the perfect package, but they didn't see what it took to maintain that perfection. But for now, none of that showed. By the early 1960s, Cliff Richard had become a household name, starring in films, selling out venues, and solidifying himself as Britain's reigning king of pop. He was at the top of his game, admired by millions, but fame, as always, had a cost. Even for someone as carefully composed as Cliff Richard, maintaining that level of success meant sacrifices, personal and professional, that would only come to light years later. What happens when the adoration of millions turns into a nightmare, leaving an icon to face an unbearable truth that fame doesn't protect you, it exposes you? For Cliff Richard, the cracks began to form long before the public knew what was happening. There was a softer heartbreak early on, one hidden behind the glamour and smiles. Richard's close friendship with Olivia Newton-John masked feelings that ran much deeper. They shared decades of memories, stages, duets, laughter, but it wasn't the love story he quietly hoped for. He later revealed those feelings were unreturned, and though they remained close friends, the clarity of what could never be cast a shadow that lingered. It was a heartbreak he carried far longer than anyone realized, only truly surfacing when Newton-John passed away in 2022. Her loss reopened old wounds. "I hate that word," he said, referring to death, struggling to reconcile his grief with the inevitable finality of it all. But it was in 2014 that a much darker chapter in his life began. On a quiet day in August, police carried out an unexpected raid on his home in Berkshire, live streamed by the BBC for the world to see. Helicopters hovered above while cameras captured every moment, the key turning in the lock, officers stepping into the house, and boxes being shuffled out. People watched, judged, and assumed. For the BBC, this dramatic footage was internally referred to as the money shot, a term that revealed how little concern they had for his privacy. As the story spread like wildfire, Cliff Richard's world unraveled. The allegation claimed something had occurred in a room that, as it turned out, didn't even exist. Yet for 22 months, the police pursued an investigation that would ultimately lead nowhere. In the process, it drained him emotionally and physically. He described how the experience robbed him of any sense of comfort in his own home. "My house felt contaminated," he later admitted. The very spaces that once gave him peace now reminded him of intrusion. He couldn't sleep, lost weight, and developed shingles from the constant stress. The man the country had adored for decades now found himself publicly humiliated and privately broken. The aftermath forced him to confront an unforgiving reality. Cliff Richard was fighting not only to clear his name, but to reclaim his sense of self. He launched a legal battle against the BBC and the South Yorkshire police. The courtroom became a battleground where his lawyers argued that his right to privacy had been obliterated. The judge agreed, calling the BBC's actions arrogant and sensationalist. This legal victory awarded him £210,000 in damages, along with an official acknowledgement that his privacy had been violated. Cliff Richard's journey isn't just about fame or survival. It's a reminder of what it takes to endure. Few artists could weather the storms he faced, from a relentless press to deeply personal heartbreak, and emerge with their legacy not only intact but thriving. With over 250 million records sold and a career spanning 5 decades of #1 hits, he didn't just define British rock and roll, he redefined resilience. John Lennon once said, "Before Cliff and Move It, there was nothing worth listening to in Britain." How many stars today could rise, fall, and rise again like he did?